Remember about a month ago when the Oklahoma State School Superintendent announced that he intended to spend $3 million in state money to purchase Bibles for the state's public schools, and the requirements he laid down for those Bibles were so specific that the only Bibles in print that qualified were those tacky God Bless the USA Bibles endorsed by Donald Trump? Well, just in case you don't remember, here's a catch-up courtesy of the great Hemant Mehta at Friendly Atheist. Ryan Walters, who is the Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction, wants a King James Version Bible in every classroom. Walters indicated he would be doing this back in June, when he issued a memo demanding that every public school teacher incorporate the Bible into their curriculum in order to teach our kids about the history of this country. He said adherence to this mandate is compulsory and that immediate and strict compliance is expected. Skipping ahead a little bit, last month, to facilitate his absurd demand, Walters announced that he would set aside $3 million from his office's budget to purchase Bibles for use in classrooms. He later asked the state legislature to double that, but they have yet to approve it. That amount, his office explained, would come from a pool of money reserved for Department of Education's staff salaries. Besides the fact that teachers were not asking for Bibles, or, for that matter, asking someone like Walters to micromanage what they do in the classroom, Oklahoma only has about 43,000 public school teachers, most of whom don't teach classes that would need a Bible under Walters' own plans. Things got even weirder a few weeks ago when Walters released his request for proposal for all of those books, basically asking publishers to bid on supplying them to Oklahoma schools, presumably giving a contract to the company that met all the requirements and came in with the lowest bid. And wouldn't you know it, all the requirements described the Trump Bible just perfectly. And then this is from the actual request by Ryan Walters. Scope and description. The bid response shall show the ability of the bidder to meet or exceed the following mandatory specifications. The supplier must provide 55,000 Bibles, with shipping included to each school district and with a 2-week delivery time after contract award date. The supplier must provide only the King James Version Bible for historical accuracy and contain both the Old and New Testaments. The supplier's Bible must include copies of the United States Pledge of Allegiance, the United States Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, and the United States Bill of Rights. Skipping ahead a little further, the books also needed to be leather-bound or bound in leather-like material for some reason, and they needed to be shipped to schools within 2 weeks of the contract being signed, which in practice meant the Bibles had to already be printed and ready to go. So obviously this proposal was tailored to the Trump Bible, the God Bless the USA Bible. It's the only one that meets the requirements laid out, and the especially egregious thing about that is that because he endorsed those Bibles, Donald Trump gets a cut of every sale. So some of that money, some of that $3 million in state funds that would be spent on those Bibles would end up in Donald Trump's pocket. And after people realized that this is what was going on, that this was obviously just a poorly disguised excuse to spend millions of dollars in state funds to goose sales for Trump's Bible and to put a certain percentage of those millions directly into Donald Trump's pocket, Ryan Walters did react and amend his initial request. Once again, from the same article by Hemant Mehta at The Friendly Atheist, there was predictable backlash to all of this. So earlier this month, Walters revised the RFP to make the requirements a little less stringent. The additional documents, like the U.S. Constitution, were no longer mandatory inside the books. But that, too, wasn't really a change because of how it was worded in the amended RFP. The new application said those documents could be bound together or separately. but added that they must also be bound in durable material. In other words, publishers would have to create a brand new book with a sturdy cover that was only a few pages long. Why make that change? In my view, Meta says, because it would look like you're opening the door to non-Trump Bibles, while immediately shutting the door on that possibility by adding a different, meaningless requirement. The end result was that the Trump Bibles were still the only viable options for the schools, and Walters had every intention of spending over $3 million in taxpayer money on them. Well, that new amended request didn't really get Walters anywhere because it's still just as obvious that it's a money laundering scheme to send a state-funded kickback to Donald Trump, and now he's being sued. Quoting from the same article, this morning a coalition of groups filed a lawsuit to stop this plan from going into effect. The ACLU, the ACLU of Oklahoma, Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice are representing more than 30 Oklahomans who have a variety of reasons for not wanting the Bible mandate to go into effect. And then this is a quote from the press release from the plaintiffs. The 32 plaintiffs include 14 public school parents, 4 public school teachers, and 3 faith leaders who object to Walters' extremist agenda that imposes his personal religious beliefs on other people's children in violation of Oklahomans' religious freedom and the separation of church and state. The plaintiffs come from a variety of faith traditions, including Baptist, Catholic, Presbyterian, USA, and United Church of Christ, and some identify as atheist, agnostic, or non-religious. Some are of indigenous heritage, and some have family situations, such as LGBTQ+ members or children with special educational needs that cause particular concerns around teaching the Bible in public schools, especially around bullying. And then back to Hemant Mehta writing, specifically, the lawsuit says that Walters' Bible mandate interferes with the parents' ability to direct the religious and moral upbringing of their children. Their kids face coercive instruction on religion in their public schools that is contrary to their own beliefs, and it uses tax dollars to support a single religious tradition. Ryan Walters is not just a Trump supporter. Ryan Walters is a Christian nationalist who has been using his position as the head of Oklahoma's public schools to try and force his religion into public schools for years now. And not just his regressive right-wing authoritarian interpretation of Christianity either, his bigoted and extremist political views as well. This is the guy, Ryan Walters, who appointed Libs of TikTok to a state library advisory board so she could have a say in what books get shelved in libraries and which ones get taken out. This is the guy who approved the use of PragerU materials in Oklahoma public school classrooms. This is the guy who, along with the governor of Oklahoma, supported spending state money to start a Catholic charter school. And that scheme was blocked by a 7-1 vote of the Oklahoma State Supreme Court. So that's who Ryan Walters is, and that's his agenda, and that's what he is trying and has been trying to do. But much like Donald Trump, Ryan Walters himself is not the totality of the problem. He is just a symptom of the problem. The problem, in this case, is a particular kind of Christian who feels entitled to inject their religion, and not just their religion broadly speaking, but specifically their narrow, small-minded interpretation of their religion into everyone else's life through force of law. They feel the right, the obligation, the entitlement to write their religious principles into law. so that everyone subject to that law, in this case, everyone in the state of Oklahoma, would be compelled to live by the rules of their church, regardless of the personal faith or lack thereof of any one of those citizens. That's not freedom. That's tyranny. Christian nationalists like Ryan Walters, or whatever you want to call them, dominionists, whatever they call themselves, they love to wrap themselves in the American flag and claim that they are patriots and that they just want to honor this country and see that everyone lives by the founding principles of the United States. Freedom of religion is one of the founding principles of the United States. In fact, it's in the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. It's the first clause of the First Amendment. Freedom of religion comes before freedom of speech and freedom of the press and the right to peaceably assemble and the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. It's the first part of the First Amendment, and freedom of religion necessarily includes freedom from religion. That's why we uphold a separation of church and state. That separation, despite what the Ryan Walters of the world will try to tell you, is not anti-religious. It is not inherently atheistic. I happen to be an atheist, like Hamed Mehta, but you don't have to be an atheist to recognize the importance of the separation of church and state. Many religious people who practice a wide variety of religious traditions believe in the importance of the separation of church and state and speak out and stand up to defend it against people like Ryan Walters. The purpose of the separation is not to create a secular society in the sense of a godless society where individual citizens don't practice whatever religion they want to practice or religious institutions aren't allowed to exist. That's not the purpose of the separation of church and state. The purpose of it is to create a secular government. And the reason why a secular government is important is because only with a secular government can we have a society with religious freedom, a religiously pluralistic society where people of all faiths and people of no faith have the same rights to worship or not worship as they see fit. A secular government recognizes no religion and upholds no official state religion and cannot use its power, which is the power of law and the power to enforce the law, to impose any religion on the people of the country. That is why the separation of church and state is so important and is essential to freedom of religion. And the bitterest irony in all of this is that those shitty Trump Bibles that Ryan Walters wants to buy with $3 million of Oklahoma taxpayer dollars, those Bibles contain copies of the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. That's the gimmick. That's why they're called the God Bless the USA Bible, because they don't have just the King James text of the Bible. They have the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And in this particular case, it's not only good that they have that, it's deliciously ironic, because the Bibles that he wants to spend $3 million to buy, those very Bibles contain the documents that should prohibit him from buying them. Maybe if he bothered to read them first, he would have known better. But then again, Christians like Ryan Walters typically don't seem to care what the Bible or the Constitution actually say. And why should this time be any different?